I had never left my hometown in all my life. So the day I received my very first Social Security retirement check, I decided it was time to treat myself, to take a solo trip to Boston. But then, out of the blue, my son said he wanted to take me somewhere. It was a weekend in December. He told me it would be relaxing, something fun. Instead, he drove us out to the middle of nowhere to go camping. The wind sliced across my face like knives, and I huddled deep into a flimsy folding chair, shivering from head to toe. He handed me a cold sandwich and chuckled, "Hey, Mom, this is what travel's really like. I've been all over the country for work these past few years, and honestly, nothing beats being home." He paused for a moment, then added, "So I was thinking maybe you shouldn't go to Boston after all. I mean, it's such a long way for you to go by yourself. I'd be worried sick." I felt a pang of disappointment, but I nodded anyway. I canceled the trip, like a good sport. That night, I was warming my feet in the living room while he made a phone call from the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but his voice, low and sharp, carried through the hallway straight to my ears. She finally dropped the idea. Can you believe it? My mom's 67 and still dreaming about traveling on her own. That little check she gets, she should be saving it for me, not wasting it on some stupid trip. She doesn't even think about how much a trip like that would cost. I let out a soft, bitter laugh. So he wasn't worried about my safety. He was worried I might actually spend the money on myself. The very next morning, I went straight to the travel agency. I canceled the budget group tour I had originally booked and upgraded to a premium package. Five-star hotels, first-class flights, and a deep dive city itinerary. If the money's in my hands, why on earth should I save it for him to spend? Humming to myself, I opened my laptop and started mapping out my dream trip to Boston. Last month, I received my very first retirement check, $2,000. Out of nowhere, a little spark lit up in me. I wanted to treat myself. Daniel was married and settled. For the first time in decades, I felt like a weight had finally been lifted off my shoulders. A few days ago, while walking along Main Street, I saw a big poster in a travel agency window. Boston, 4 days, 3 nights, all-inclusive tour for $1,000, flights and meals included. I stood there staring at that poster for a full 5 minutes. I went back and forth about it for a whole week. In the end, I made up my mind and swiped my card. I had never left my hometown, never even been on a plane. But Daniel, he's been everywhere: New York, Chicago, San Francisco. He talks about it like a pro. That thought nudged me to call him. I figured I'd ask if there was anything I should know before traveling. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then his voice came through, cautious and a little surprised. "You're going on a trip." "Where to?" I laughed. "Boston, of course. Remember when you were little? You used to say that once you made enough money, you'd take me to Boston." He knew, he's always known. That city had been my dream when I was young. I used to watch those snowy scenes of the Boston Common and the Freedom Trail on TV and tell him, "One day, when you're all grown up, I'll go there too." But now he was grown, and forget taking me there, it had become rare just to see him. I joked lightly, "But you're busy with work these days, so I'm not expecting you to take me. I can go on my own." I thought he'd be happy for me, but instead his voice rose sharp and impatient. "You know how much pressure I'm under right now, and you're thinking about going on vacation?" His sudden tone caught me off guard. Daniel had always been the gentle, thoughtful son in the eyes of our relatives. He had never spoken to me like that before. Maybe he realized he'd gone too far because a moment later, his voice softened. "No, Mom, that's not what I meant. I actually planned a surprise for you this weekend to celebrate your retirement. I've had it arranged for a while. I just didn't expect you to book a trip out of the blue." He paused, then added with emphasis, "I really made time. I wanted it to be special." Hearing that, I didn't hesitate. "Then I'll cancel the trip. After all, Boston will always be there. I could go any time." But this was the first time he'd ever offered to take me somewhere. I'd be lying if I said it didn't touch me. We set the date for the weekend. I got up early that morning, excited like a kid, packing my bag and carefully putting on the new off-white down coat I'd bought just for the occasion. It's kind of sad, but the last time I bought myself a new outfit was over 10 years ago. That thought made me chuckle softly. I'd spent so many years revolving my entire life around Daniel. I'd almost forgotten how to be myself. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the woman whose wrinkles had grown more defined, and whispered to her silently, "Just this once, let yourself be selfish." I'd still have to live frugally in the future. Who knew what big expenses might be waiting down the line? Just as that thought passed, the doorbell rang. Daniel had arrived. He glanced at my outfit, his brows lifting slightly. "Mom, you bought new clothes?" I spun around playfully and asked, a little shy but hopeful, "Yeah, what do you think?" Instead of answering, he asked, "How much did it cost?" I hesitated. Winter clothes are expensive. The wool sweater and the coat together were $500. He drew in a sharp breath, frowning. "Mom, when did you start spending like this?" I just shrugged and smiled. "I'm retired now. I'm finally free. Of course I want to enjoy it a little." His face didn't look pleased. I couldn't help but ask, "What, are you upset that I spent a little on myself?" Daniel waved it off. "That's not what I meant, Mom. It's your money. You should do what you want with it." He said it so easily, even smiled a bit, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the smile never made it to his eyes. Still, I didn't dwell on it. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. But before I could get far, he reached over, took the bag out of my hand, and tossed it back on the couch. "No need to pack. We're not staying anywhere overnight. It's just a day trip. Just bring snacks." As he spoke, he started pulling fruit and granola bars from the kitchen, stuffing them into a cooler. "Mom, why do you buy so much junk food? This stuff's expensive and bad for you. You really shouldn't eat so much of it." I nodded. "All right." Hearing his concern for my health, I felt a flicker of warmth. He still cared about what I ate. He still wanted to take me out and give me a break. I couldn't help but feel grateful. I was in a great mood on the drive. Daniel had been behind the wheel for nearly an hour and a half when he finally pulled over in a desolate stretch of the suburbs. I looked out the window, confused. A muddy little creek cut through the frozen ground. An endless stretch of dead yellow grass surrounded us. Not a single decent tree in sight. I blinked and asked, "Weren't we going to stroll around a little town nearby?" This wasn't even remotely close to a town, but Daniel was already popping the trunk open, cheerfully saying, "Mom, we're going camping today. Look at this view. It's beautiful. I've been wanting to bring you here for ages." The kind of camping I had imagined was something out of a postcard. Sunny afternoon, family gathered on the lawn, around a fire, chatting, laughing, taking in the scenery. That kind of thing could be lovely. But it was winter. The wind sliced straight through my coat, creeping down the back of my neck like ice. I stared at the withered little creek, then down at the thermos in my hand, and felt my gut twist with doubt. But this was the first time Daniel had ever said he wanted to take me somewhere. I didn't want to ruin it, so I hunched my shoulders and eased myself into the folding chair. Daniel chuckled and said, "Cold, huh? And you thought you could handle Boston? It's even colder there. Home is way more comfortable." I rubbed my hands together and murmured, "Daniel, I know, but I really do want to see Boston at least once." Winters here were damp, gray, and miserable, but I'd heard that Boston in the winter was like a fairy tale, snowfall blanketing the city like a silver cloak. Before I could say more, he blurted out, "You want to see snow? I'll send you some pictures." I froze. Didn't you already send me those? But pictures can't replace actually being there. Every time he traveled somewhere, he'd send me a few snapshots. Each time he'd say, "Next time, I'll take you too." But it had never happened. Not once. Honestly, I'd stopped expecting him to take me. But now that I'd finally made the decision to go on my own, he was trying to placate me with a couple of photos. I looked down and rubbed my fingers, and just like that, the small warmth I'd been holding on to evaporated into the cold wind. Daniel, meanwhile, was still going on with one of his philosophical monologues. "Mom, it's just that you haven't traveled much, so everything out there seems exciting. But I've been all over, work trips, vacations, and honestly, nothing beats home." He glanced over at me, the way you look at a stubborn kid, and said, "Going places is exhausting. It's not worth it. And besides, how can I be okay with you going off alone? Going places is exhausting and not worth it." The wind stung my face, but something else pricked deeper. Every holiday season, didn't he and his wife ask me to wire over a little something so they could unwind and get away together? I rubbed my cheeks like I could scrub that bitter thought right off my skin. I said softly, "If you don't want me to go, then I won't." The freezing wind made that easier to say. He clearly relaxed, smiling as he pulled a stiff, flattened sandwich from his backpack and handed it to me. Now that's more like it. No need to wear yourself out at your age. Here, eat something to warm up. I took the sandwich. It was as cold as a rock and held it in my hands, but I couldn't bring myself to take a bite. My numb fingers brushed against the wrapper, and another scene came to mind. If I weren't sitting on this bleak riverbank, I might be at a cozy restaurant in downtown Boston right now, sipping a hot bowl of clam chowder while snow drifted gently past the windows. But I pushed that thought away. No regrets. This was Daniel's first time taking me anywhere after all. We sat in the biting wind for an hour. The sky grew darker, and a few raindrops began to splatter against my coat, cold and sticky. Daniel stood up and brushed off his hands. "Let's go, Mom. It's starting to rain." I rubbed my frozen fingers. "All right." After freezing all afternoon, the last thing I wanted was to cook dinner. Once inside the car, I worked up the nerve to ask, "Are we eating out tonight? Since you took me out today, I'd love to treat you to a nice dinner. There's this new place on—" "I don't like restaurant food," he cut in sharply. "Let's just go home and cook." I hesitated. Then he added, "Besides, it's been a while since I had one of your home-cooked meals." I looked at him, surprised. Daniel had never had much praise for my cooking, but hearing him say that, it stirred something warm in me. Maybe when people grow up, they do start missing the taste of home. "All right, then." I smiled and nodded. On the way home, I stopped by the grocery store alone and picked up a few things Daniel liked to eat. But as I turned the corner and headed toward the apartment, arms full of fresh groceries, I spotted him sitting on the bench outside, talking on the phone. He was trying to keep his voice low, but in the stillness of that winter night, every word landed clear and sharp, like nails hammered straight into my chest. I spent the whole day out in that god-awful place with my mom. Damn near froze to death. Thank God she finally gave up on that Boston trip. At least all that effort wasn't for nothing. She even wanted to eat out tonight. Can you believe it? Most old folks try to save up for their kids, but her? She's planning to blow her entire retirement check on herself. If she just put some of it into a CD or something, Heather and I could actually catch a break someday. He let out a long, exhausted sigh. I don't know what's gotten into her. She used to be so frugal, but now retired for 5 minutes and already spending money like water. If she keeps this up, there won't be anything left for me when she dies. My hand went limp. The plastic handles dug into my fingers, biting deep like something trying to twist every bone in my hand. A heavy, bitter pressure settled on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I never earned much before I retired. My ex-husband was a gambler. By the time we divorced, I was left with almost nothing. Daniel was 10. Only I knew how hard those years had been, pinching every penny, only shopping when things were on sale. And when he got older, even when I'd finally saved a little, I never dared spend it. Everything was about his future, laying the foundation for him to thrive. So when he finally landed on his feet and built a stable life, I let myself exhale for the first time in decades. That retirement check, it was the result of a lifetime of work. I'd never been a spender. This trip was supposed to be the first time I did something, anything, just for me. And yet, he called me wasteful. He took me out to a freezing riverbank for hours just to talk me out of going. The more I thought about it, the more absurd it all seemed. The more I thought, the angrier I became. Suddenly, I started questioning everything. Had all these years of sacrifice, restraint, and putting him first really been worth it? I didn't hesitate anymore. I pulled out my phone and dialed the travel agency. "Hi, yes, I'd like to book the next available trip to Boston. The most expensive, highest tier package you've got." At that moment, it finally became clear. I would rather spend every last dime on myself than save another cent for my son. When I got home, Daniel was sprawled on the couch, munching on a bag of chips and glued to a football replay on TV. I swallowed my anger, tossed the groceries into the fridge, and slammed the door shut with a thud. "I'm not cooking tonight," I said flatly. Figure something out yourself. He looked up, startled. Mom, what's going on? I set down my purse and sat on the armchair. I just booked a trip to Boston for next week. He shot upright, his brows knitting together. Wait, didn't we already agree you weren't going? Why'd you change your mind? How much is that tour? 3,200, I said, slipping off my shoes. 3,200, I said, slipping off my shoes. 3,200, I said, slipping off my shoes. 3,200? He nearly leapt off the couch. Mom, my monthly salary is only a little over 6 grand. That trip's basically half my paycheck gone. You sure you didn't get scammed? How can a trip to Boston cost that much? I smiled, calm as ever. Nope, not scammed. It's 5-star hotels and Michelin-rated meals. You said it yourself. You don't feel safe with me traveling alone. And I agreed. Cheap tours don't offer much security. The expensive ones do. Daniel stared at me, visibly thrown off, like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Mom, you used to be so frugal. You wouldn't even buy something unless it was on clearance. What happened? I let out a dry laugh. Didn't you always say I should learn to be kinder to myself? So, what's the problem now that I finally am? He had no response, as he knew I was right. All those times he told me to spend a little on myself, he never thought I actually would. It was easy to be generous with advice when he assumed I'd stay the same, always saving, always sacrificing for him. Seeing I had no intention of backing down, he sighed. Fine. If you're really set on going, then go. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 days later, he called. Mom, Heather's pregnant. Could you come stay with us for a few days just for now? His tone had changed, soft, coaxing. I know you're excited about Boston. Once she's past the first trimester and everything's stable, I'll pay for your trip myself. Sound fair? He paused, then added with a bit of pressure, You don't want something to happen to her, do you? The moment I heard the word happen, my throat tightened. I knew Heather had miscarried once before. Since then, she'd been extra cautious. I'm a woman. I understand how hard pregnancy can be. I let out a long breath somewhere between resignation and self-persuasion. Fine. Boston could wait. For the second time, I canceled my trip, packed my bag, and moved into their home. The moment I stepped through the door, I sensed something was off. Heather was curled up on the living room sofa, hugging a cushion with a sour expression. Daniel stood leaning against the kitchen doorway, his face blank, not even glancing in her direction. What's going on? I asked, setting down my bag and scanning the room. The tension was thick. Daniel quickly walked over and took my luggage, his voice almost suspiciously gentle. Nothing, Mom, don't mind her. She's just a little emotional. He paused, then added with a casual shrug. Now that she's pregnant, she's been getting these ideas, like saying we should move into a bigger place. But where am I supposed to get that kind of money? He shot a pointed look at Heather, and his tone began to sour. And it's not just about moving. She actually wants to ask you for help. He turned to me, forcing a weary smile. Mom, you already bought us this apartment. How could I ask you for anything more? Heather's tears fell instantly, right on cue. She stood and rushed toward me, gripping my hand tightly. Evelyn, listen to him, she said, voice trembling. All I want is a little more space for the baby. We only have 2 bedrooms. Once the baby's here, both our parents will need to help out, and this place just isn't big enough. She sniffled and dabbed delicately at her eyes. She looked heartbreakingly pitiful, and just like that I understood. They weren't fighting. They were performing. They were worried I might actually spend my money on myself. So now they were trying to guilt me into buying them a second home. I gave a tight smile and shook my head. Son, it's not that I don't want to help, but I honestly don't have money for another down payment. Heather's eyes lit up like a switch had flipped. Her tone turned instantly sweet and eager. Oh no, Mom. We wouldn't dream of asking you for the down payment. Daniel and I have been working for years. We've saved some. We'd cover that part ourselves. We were just wondering, maybe you could help with the monthly mortgage payments? In the past, I would have said yes before they even finished the sentence. But now I only hesitated for a beat, then spoke slowly. To be honest, most of my spare cash is tied up in the stock market. The stock market? Daniel practically shouted, like I'd confessed to robbing a bank. Mom, are you seriously trading stocks? I patted his shoulder and said lightly, "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Just give me a couple more years. Once I'm done playing the market, I might just buy you a beach house." I flashed him a big, bold smile. He loved dangling impossible promises in front of me. This time, I gave him one of my own because one thing was certain: he wasn't getting a single penny. Daniel's expression fell instantly. He waved his hand in frustration. "Mom, don't you know how risky that stuff is? People lose everything in the stock market. Why would you put your money into that?" I countered with a calm, measured voice. "I might actually understand the market better than you think." He looked at me skeptically, his eyes darting, calculating. Then his tone shifted. "Mom, I'm serious. I don't think this kind of thing is right for you. How about this? Why don't you just transfer your retirement money into my account? Going forward, I'll save it for you. One of my friends runs this super low risk investment program. The returns aren't huge, but it's stable." He paused, then added with a reassuring smile, "Of course, it's your money. I'd never touch it." I smiled back, the same gentle maternal smile he'd seen his whole life, but inside, my heart had gone cold. So this was it. He'd finally dropped the act. That retirement money? He wasn't getting near it. I'd rather gamble it away in Vegas than hand it over to him. What he didn't know was that my little foray into the stock market had actually paid off handsomely. I'd made a tidy profit over the years, and those profits? They'd all been transferred quietly into another account. A college fund I'd opened in his name. It was meant as a cushion, a gift for his future. But now it was time to rethink that gift entirely. Ever since I refused to help them buy a new house, Daniel and Heather did a complete 180. The very next morning, I had barely used 2 sheets of paper towel to wipe down the kitchen table when Daniel appeared beside me, arms crossed and sighing loudly. "Mom, could you maybe start being a little more careful with stuff like that? Heather's still thinking about upgrading the house. We really need to start saving. Little things like utilities and paper towels, they add up." I blinked at him. Nearly 70 years of life, and that was the first time I'd ever heard someone try to save up for a house by rationing paper towels. It was obvious he wasn't worried about paper towels. He was trying to shame me, but I didn't call him out on it. Instead, I played the part beautifully. I tucked the paper towel back and looked down, guilt painted all over my face. "You're right, saving isn't easy. I'm sorry I can't help with the house. I'll stop wasting things." My act left him with nowhere to place his anger. His face turned an ugly shade of gray with frustration. Before heading out that morning, he went around the apartment, turning off lights like a man possessed. Then, to top it off, he shut off the central heating. "Mom, electricity bills are through the roof. I left a space heater in Heather's room. She's pregnant. If you get cold, just hang out in there." He even said it with a straight face, like he was doing me a favor. But we both knew I was never going to barge into my pregnant daughter-in-law's bedroom just to keep warm. This wasn't about saving energy. It was about freezing me out, literally. I didn't bother arguing. I threw on my coat and headed out for the day, determined to give myself a proper break. And ever since I stopped saving money for them, spending had become unexpectedly liberating. Saw a purse I liked? Bought it. Spotted a scarf that caught my eye? Took it straight to the register. No price tags, no discounts, no second guessing, just joy. When I came home with several glossy designer shopping bags dangling from my arms, Daniel was standing by the door, jaw slack, like he just watched someone rob a bank in broad daylight. Heather's eyes were locked on the bags, her hand already reaching out. "Oh my God, Evelyn, this brand. Their coats run over $2,000 a piece." I've always wanted one, but could never bring myself to splurge. She was already pulling a jacket halfway out of a bag, holding it up to herself like she owned it. "This one is it for me." I couldn't blame her for asking. The last time she pouted over a $1,000 limited edition handbag Daniel wouldn't buy, she made such a scene that I caved and bought it for her myself. She cried in my arms that day, told me I was kinder than her own mother, swore she'd never forget what I'd done for her. No, they wouldn't even spare me a damn space heater. I watched her modeling the jacket in the mirror and said coolly, "No, that one's for Emily." "Emily? Your niece?" Her hands froze midair. I nodded. "The rest is for me." Her face darkened. Her lips twitched. "Evelyn, you sure are generous with yourself. and your niece. I answered evenly, well, if I'm not generous to myself, who else will be? Then I turned to Daniel, my tone shifting, no longer bothering to sugarcoat anything. After all, I'm just a guest staying in my own son's home, can't even get the heat turned on for me. Heather's expression soured instantly. Daniel finally spoke up, frustration seeping into his voice. Mom, if you want to splurge, that's your choice. But you bought Emily clothes and Heather's carrying your grandchild. Don't you think it's a little unfair you didn't buy her anything? I smiled, calm, steady. Daniel, when I bought you a house and a car, did I ever hear the word unfair? Now I spend my own money on a jacket for my niece and suddenly you're offended. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Emily was my late sister's daughter. My sister and her husband had died in a car accident when Emily was still a child. She was passed from relative to relative, never truly having a place to call home. She lived with me the longest. We grew close, closer than I had ever expected. Even now, no matter how tight things got for her, she always showed up on holidays with gifts in hand. Small tokens, yes, but they came from the heart. Daniel and Emily had once been close back when they were little, playing, eating, growing up together. But as they got older, Daniel had grown cold toward her, distant, almost hostile. I hadn't understood it at first. Now I did. He was afraid. Afraid that if Emily stayed close, I might decide to leave her part of what I had. He'd buried his selfishness so deep, he saw hidden agendas in everyone else. But I saw it all clearly now. After yesterday, I knew he was more desperate than ever to get his hands on my savings. But no matter what he said, no matter what he tried, he wasn't getting a dime. A few days later, Daniel took Heather to her prenatal appointment. When he came back that evening, he stood at the doorway alone, eyes rimmed red. The moment he walked in, his voice cracked with desperation. Mom, please, I'm begging you, help me. I set down my book and looked up. Heather, she broke down at the clinic today. I don't even know what happened. She just lost it. She said if we don't get a new place, she doesn't want to keep the baby. His panic was real. He was floundering, clearly watching my face for any sign of sympathy. I said nothing. When I didn't react, his voice sharpened with frustration. Mom, are you seriously going to just sit there and do nothing about your own grandchild? She meant it. If she says she'll terminate the pregnancy, she will. I let the silence linger for a moment. Then I asked, do Heather's parents know she's pregnant yet? Daniel blinked, caught off guard. His eyes darted away. Not yet. We were going to tell them after 3 months once things were stable. That won't do. I reached for my phone. This is too big to keep from them. Her dad's been dreaming about being a grandpa for years. Right in front of him, I started dialing. Better let him be the one to talk her down. Heather always listens to him. Daniel lunged forward and snatched the phone from my hand. Mom, what are you doing? She doesn't want them to know yet. I shrugged. Well, that's too bad. You weren't home earlier, so I already texted them. Just told them you two had a prenatal appointment today. His face paled. His mouth opened, then shut, and all he managed was a strained, fine. What's done is done. I was about to sit back down when his phone rang. I expected it to be Heather, ready to scold me for meddling. But after he answered, his face twisted into something far uglier. He stared at me like I'd betrayed him on a molecular level. His jaw clenched, voice low and livid. You gave Emily money? 100,000? He slammed his phone down on the table, the crack echoing through the room. She says she wants to buy a house and you just hand it over. I'm your son. I didn't flinch. My voice stayed level. Emily doesn't have a home. She asked to borrow the money and I agreed. She's not asking for a gift. She'll pay it back. I paused, meeting his eyes without blinking. And you? Don't act like you're broke. I know you have money. You lied to my face and said you couldn't afford a cent. Daniel's face went crimson. I don't care. If you've got that kind of money, you should be helping us buy a house. What if I say no? I asked calmly. His mouth curled into a bitter smile, his eyes flashing with something I'd never seen before, something cold and final. Then don't blame me for cutting you off. If you're not going to give us anything, then I don't see the point of calling you my mom anymore. And with that, he yanked the front door open. In that moment, it hit me. He wasn't just upset. He was kicking me out. That night at 8:10 p.m., I was thrown out of my son's home. I used to think those news stories, son kicks mother out, were sensational headlines meant to stir emotions, the kind of drama you only saw in daytime television. I never imagined one day I'd become the woman in that very story. I stood by the curb, suitcase in hand, waiting for a cab, while the wind sliced through the collar of my coat like a blade. And yet, strangely enough, though it was colder than any night before, I didn't feel it at all. Maybe when your heart goes completely numb, you stop noticing the cold. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, managing a bitter smile. I'd only stayed at his place a few days. Every single word exchanged had been a sting. If that's the kind of son he's chosen to be, then maybe I don't need a son like that at all. When I got back to my little apartment, I actually exhaled for the first time in what felt like weeks. I made dinner for myself, sipped tea, turned on the TV to whatever I felt like watching, went to bed when I wanted, no one to answer to. I even called the travel agency again and booked a new trip for after the holidays. This time, I wouldn't just visit Boston. I'd head north, winding through New Haven, Portland, maybe even up into Maine. I'd take a full month, take my time, come home when I felt like it. But first, I'd promised to help Emily look at some properties. I ended up recommending to her a neighborhood I had once scouted for Daniel. What he never knew was this. That winter, when he and Heather first started talking about having a baby, I had already begun quietly researching bigger homes. I was nearing retirement. Work had slowed. Most days, I wandered the city, touring open houses and scribbling down notes. Eventually, I found a coastal condo I fell in love with. I even put down a deposit to hold it. I didn't tell him. I wanted it to be a surprise. What a joke that turned out to be. Now, I was walking Emily through that same recommendation. She lit up the moment I mentioned it and asked if I'd go see it with her. I thought it would be a simple outing, just another house viewing with Emily. I never expected to walk into the sales office and see Daniel and Heather standing right there. The moment Daniel laid eyes on me and saw Emily by my side, his face clouded over like a storm front rolling in. I met his glare with perfect composure, like he was nothing more than a breeze passing through glass. Just then, a young sales associate recognized me and came rushing over with cheerful enthusiasm. Ma'am, are you here to finalize the down payment today? Down payment? Daniel spun around like he'd been struck by lightning, his eyes jumping from me to Emily. You're not, you're not buying her a house, are you? Emily flinched, panicked, her voice trembling. No, Daniel, it's not what you think. Shut up, he barked, then turned his fury back on me with a sneer. So that's what this is about? You're scared no one's going to take care of you when you're old. She's not even your daughter. You think she'll care about you. You think she'll wipe your damn drool? His voice thundered across the entire office. The sales rep looked alarmed and jumped in quickly. Sir, there's a misunderstanding. This lady, she's one of our most loyal clients. Always talked about surprising her son with a home. Said she wanted to keep it hush-hush. What? Daniel froze. You're saying she was buying this place for her son? The rep nodded enthusiastically, unaware of the volcano he just triggered. Oh, yes. She compared dozens of listings, and this one was her favorite. She even asked which building was closest to the best schools for her future grandchild. Trust me, I remember her clearly. Daniel looked like a rooster that had just been drop-kicked mid-strut. His face went blank, his lips trembled, and for once in his life, he had nothing to say. I didn't even look at him. Instead, I turned to the sales rep with a calm but final tone. Sorry to trouble you, I've changed my mind. I won't be buying the unit after all. The associate blinked in confusion. Why? Is it the layout? The price? We can offer alternatives. It's not the property, I said slowly, shaking my head. It's the person. I let my gaze sweep past Daniel without pause. My son has decided to cut ties with me. This house, even if I bought it, there'd be no one to live in it. I stepped out of the sales office. But just as I reached the sidewalk, Daniel came storming after me, desperate. Mom, I was wrong. Okay, I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have treated you like that. Please, just forgive me. He reached out to grab my arm, but I yanked it back and stepped away. I'm not your mother, I said coldly, so stop calling me that. Daniel froze. Then, like a switch flipped, he pasted on a syrupy smile and whipped out his phone, talking fast, too fast. Okay, okay. Look, you always wanted to go to Boston, right? I'm calling the agency now. First class ticket, I swear. No, wait. Let's add New York, Philly, wherever you want. You go. Take your time. Travel as long as you like. I'll cover it all. Just please. I stared at him, watched this little performance unravel in real time. When I'm buying you a house, you're all gentle tones and sweet smiles. But the moment I say no, you throw me out like garbage. I took a breath and my voice turned to ice. You don't love me, you love what I can give you. You love the idea of a mother who never runs out of money, who never says no. And once that supply ends, so does your affection. He opened his mouth maybe to argue. I didn't let him. You're just like your father. Smooth words, no spine. Always wearing a good husband mask in public while gambling away the rent behind closed doors. Every time I gave him money, he swore he'd change, that he'd start a business, treat me right. But the moment I said no, he turned vicious, slammed doors, hurled insults, treated me like I was the one who owed him. And now here you are, his carbon copy. I inhaled deeply, then delivered the final blow. Stop pretending, Daniel. I'm not buying you a house. You won't see another cent of my money. He panicked, then begging, crying, promising anything and everything. But I didn't flinch. I blocked his number, changed the locks, and closed the door for good. Ever since I reclaimed control over my life, I'd been singing when I felt like singing, dancing when I felt like dancing, living the most peaceful, liberated days I'd had in years. Until one afternoon, I got a call from my brother, Thomas. Evelyn, he said, voice cautious. Daniel reached out to me for a loan. Did you know about that? I froze. A loan? What kind of loan? Thomas sighed. Said it was for a house, told me you were going to help repay it. Sounded so sure I thought maybe you were in on it, so I lent him 100 grand. He paused, then added, I also heard from Susan and Margaret. Apparently, he hit them up too. Evelyn, you seriously didn't know? My stomach dropped. After hanging up, I started calling around. The full picture came together fast and left me stunned. Daniel had borrowed a total of $300,000 from my siblings, all under my name. He really went that far. He was betting on my pride, assuming I'd be too ashamed to let my relatives lose money and would quietly clean up the mess for him. But he guessed wrong. I wasn't paying this debt. I marched straight to his place. He barely blinked when he saw me. Just leaned back on the couch with a smug little shrug, like he'd been expecting me. Mom, I already put the money toward a down payment. If you want it back, well, I don't have it. He stretched out his arms casually. Look, I know we said we were done, but blood's blood. If you refuse to repay them, they'll come after you. And I know you don't want to live with that, right? His tone was soaked in certainty, as if my dignity and shame would eventually cave, like they always had. I couldn't stand to look at that smug, shameless face for another second. I turned on my heel and left without a word. The minute I got home, I picked up the phone and called every relative he had borrowed from, one by one. This debt was Daniel's. I've cut ties with him. I won't repay a cent of it on his behalf. But don't worry, I also won't let your money disappear. The next morning, I dragged Thomas with me to the front of Daniel's office building. He tugged at my sleeve, nervous and hesitant. Are you really going to do this, Evelyn? He's still your son. I gave a cold laugh. If I cover this up, I'll ruin him for good. Today it's borrowing money under my name. Tomorrow it might be forging documents, racking up loans, even committing outright fraud. If I didn't stop him now, where would he draw the line? I pulled a rolled-up banner from my purse and handed one end to Thomas. We each took a side and unfurled it in front of the glass-paneled entrance to West Edge Tech. The words were bold, black, impossible to miss. West Edge Tech employee Daniel Carter defrauded his mother's savings. As expected, it didn't take long before curious passers-by started forming a crowd. Many were his coworkers. Some even recognized me. Their confused whispers were like a swarm of bees. That's Daniel's mom? No way. He's always talking about how close they are. It didn't take long for Daniel to appear, walking out with a few colleagues laughing until he spotted us. His face went ghost pale. He charged forward and yanked the banner down with both hands, hissing through clenched teeth. Mom, are you insane? Are you trying to ruin me? I looked at him, my voice calm but sharp enough to draw blood. If you don't pay back your uncle and your aunts, I'll be here every single morning. Let's see how long you keep your job when finds out. I took a step closer, my words cold and deliberate. You and I both know how hard it is to land a job with decent pay these days. His face crumpled like a paper bag. Head low, hands shaking, he clawed at his hair in frustration. He used to think I was too soft, that I'd never go this far. But now he wasn't so sure. His eyes darted, his pride shriveled, and finally he broke. Fine, he spat. Fine, I'll pay it back. All right, is that what you want? And he did. He managed to cancel the house contract and return the full sum to my family, though every inch of it was clearly done through gritted teeth. I thought that would finally be the end of it. But just a few days later, at the crack of dawn, someone began pounding on my front door like the place was on fire. I opened it, heart racing, only to find Heather's parents standing there in full fury. Right behind them were Heather and Daniel, heads bowed, low, looking like two kids caught stealing candy. Heather's mother launched into a full-blown wail the second she saw me. You monster. You drove my poor daughter to a miscarriage. You evil hag. You owe me my grandchild. You owe me a life. Heather's father wasn't far behind, his fingers stabbing the air between us. You dirty snake. We waited years for that baby, and you crushed our hope with one word. You lied to us back when they got married. You promised to take care of our daughter. You said she'd be supported. You swore on your life. They screamed in a chorus of rage, barely pausing for breath. I said nothing. My eyes slowly moved past them to Heather, who stood behind them like a porcelain doll, head down, hand over her stomach, perfectly pitiful. But I knew exactly what I was looking at. This wasn't grief. It was theater, a show rehearsed to perfection. I waited until they finally ran out of breath, until the shouting gave way to awkward panting and theatrical sighs. Then, slowly, I spoke. Miscarriage? She was never pregnant. The room went dead silent. All four of them froze. Heather's eyelid twitched, Daniel turned his head away, and her parents stared at each other in stunned disbelief. But it was the flicker of panic in their eyes that confirmed what I already knew. Heather's father, face flushing red, still tried to bluster through it. That's a lie, you have no proof. Oh, but I did. Without another word, I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my phone, and began queuing up the videos, clip after clip, right there in front of all of them, each one loaded like a bullet in a chamber. Now, take a look, I said, my voice cool and steady. December 3rd, the day you said you were at the prenatal clinic. Where were they, actually? I held up the phone, letting them all see it for themselves. An amusement park Christmas festival. In this clip, she's riding a roller coaster. Next one? Bumper cars, laughing, bouncing, not a care in the world. Daniel, you're standing right there beside her, clapping like she just won the Super Bowl. I let my gaze cut through them, sharp as glass. If you're going to claim she was pregnant, can you produce a single hospital record? A diagnosis? Anything? Daniel's face changed instantly, color draining like a punctured balloon. His voice rose an octave in disbelief. Mom, you followed us? I let out a dry, mirthless laugh. Didn't have to. Truth was, I'd suspected Heather was faking it since my second day under their roof. She had none of the signs, no nausea, no fatigue, nothing, and I'm no fool. After nearly 70 years, I know what early pregnancy looks like. I said nothing at the time, but on Christmas Day, Emily sent me a short video. She wrote, "What a coincidence. Just saw Daniel and Heather at the theme park. Looked like they were on a date." In the video, Heather was glowing, giggling as she stepped off the coaster, Daniel beaming beside her like a proud boyfriend. That moment snapped everything into place. My doubts hardened into certainty, so when I deliberately leaked the pregnancy news to Heather's parents later that day, it was no accident. I'd wanted to let them stew for a while, maybe learn a lesson, but instead they showed up at my door, all four of them, trying to squeeze one last payday out of me. I thought the video would shut them up, But no, shame wasn't in their vocabulary. They kept demanding money, louder, bolder, more shameless than ever. So I smiled and nodded. You want compensation? I reached for my phone and dialed 911 right there in front of them. Well, then, let's do this the right way. If you want drama, let's take it all the way. The moment they realized I was serious, Heather's parents nearly jumped out of their skin. Her mother's voice flipped in a heartbeat, now sugar sweet and trembling. Evelyn, come on now, we're family. There's no need to call the cops. We can talk, can't we? It's just money, forget we said anything. She laughed nervously, wringing her hands. But I mean, really, if you can afford to help out the kids a little, wouldn't it be nice just to support them? I raised an eyebrow. I cut ties with Daniel weeks ago. Why would I support them? Heather's father scoffed. You don't mean that. He's your only son. You'd never really cut him off. Not for good. Sure, you're angry now, but mother and son, how long can that last? His wife nodded eagerly. Exactly. We mothers, we raise them, love them, give them everything. If you're good to them now, they'll always remember that when you're older. I let out a sharp laugh and cut them off cold. You think I haven't done enough? I gave them everything. My time, my savings. I bought them that apartment with my retirement fund. And what did I get in return? Manipulation, greed. I turned toward Heather's parents and said slowly, deliberately, You seem to think so highly of Daniel. Fine, take him. Treat him like your own. Raise him all over again. They fell dead silent. Of course they did, because deep down they didn't care about Daniel. They cared about my money, my name on the deed, my name on the account. But if I no longer recognized him as my son, what would they have left to cling to? Not my problem anymore. As far as I'm concerned, he's no longer my son. Not today, not ever. Christmas arrived faster than I expected. On Christmas Eve, we gathered like we always had. Warm lights, the smell of roasted turkey, the gentle clink of wine glasses. Everything looked perfectly normal, almost like nothing had ever gone wrong. Thomas handed me a glass of apple cider and leaned in, his voice low. Evelyn, are you really done with Daniel for good? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. There they were, Daniel and Heather, standing on my porch like actors making their entrance. Holiday gift basket in hand, fake smiles plastered across their faces. Mom, Daniel said sweetly, stepping in, it's been too long. I've missed you so much. He looked around at the table full of relatives, the model of remorse. I've made my mom upset. I know I was wrong. Can you all help me talk to her? It's Christmas. No one wants to spend the holidays estranged from family. Thomas hesitated for a moment, then said quietly, Evelyn, maybe just give him one more chance. He seems to mean it this time. I said nothing. I kept cutting the turkey calmly, rhythmically, until the knife hit bone with a crisp crack. Only then did I set down the utensils and rise from my seat. A few minutes later, I returned with a sealed envelope and placed it in the center of the table. This, I said, voice even and quiet, is my will. My home, my retirement account, and every dollar left to my name will go to Emily Rivers, my late sister's daughter. I let that settle before continuing. She's not my biological child, but when I had surgery, she stayed by my side for 3 days straight. Some people here, meanwhile, didn't even bother to send a text. Daniel and Heather's faces went pale, their grins frozen into something close to horror. Heather panicked first. She fumbled in her purse and pulled out a stack of papers. Evelyn, please, you don't understand. I'm really pregnant this time. I swear it's not a lie. Daniel jumped in, eager. That's right, Mom. Even if you're angry with me, think about your grandchild at least. I looked at them, my tone still soft. I've already let go of you. What makes you think I'd care about a child you use as a bargaining chip? Then I walked to the door and opened it wide. Dinner's over, so is the performance. From now on, you walk your own road. 3 days after Christmas, I packed my bags and boarded a flight to Washington, D.C. Before I left, I sent Daniel a text. I've packed your things. They're at the apartment front desk. If you don't pick them up in 3 days, I'll throw them out. He never replied. Maybe he still believed, as he always had, that if he just waited long enough, I'd soften. But I didn't. I cleaned out that room myself. In the bottom drawer of his desk, I found an old tattered notebook, his elementary school journal. The pages were yellowed and worn, doodles scratched out with correction fluid, but one entry was still legible. Today, Mom said she's getting a divorce. She said it's for me so I can have a better life. She asked if I wanted to go with her. I said, of course. I know she loves me. Mom says one day she wants to see Capitol Hill in Washington. When I grow up, I'll take her there. I stood in that empty room, holding those pages, smiling through the sting in my eyes. I doubt Daniel even remembers writing those words. I sealed the journal and left it with the front desk. I didn't look back. The morning my plane took off, the sky was a deep, endless blue. I sat by the window, hands gripping the seatbelt. It was my first flight. When I was young, I couldn't afford it. Later, I convinced myself I didn't need it. But that day, I finally chose to give my life back to myself. 2 hours later, I landed in D.C. Snow was falling. I walked alone down a tree-lined path in front of the White House, caught a flake in my palm, and felt peace. A peace I had never known before. It was the first snowfall I had ever seen with my own eyes. In the months that followed, I walked countless miles. I saw monuments, museums, sunsets, and by the end of it all, I understood. It was never about the city. What I'd been searching for all along was the woman I finally became,